Before we get started, I want to just go over the packet of information that you got, okay? I need this application filled out. If you don't have your license number and you don't have your NERDS number, don't turn it in.
I'll fill it in.
Okay. If you don't turn it in though, you're not going to get credit for this class, okay? So hopefully by the 25th, we'll have everybody signed in with their NERDS number. Please print clearly because I'm going to upload you to the Real Estate Commission that you have successfully completed the 12 hours of continuing education, which is all that you need. You're finished on the 26th of this month. You don't need any other. Okay, now, there's also the National Association of Realtors 2.5 hours of ethics every 4 years. Remember that one? Okay. I worked something out with Don Willis at the board to give you credit for the 2.5 hours. That's why I said you don't need anything else. You know, after we're finished with this 12 hours, you can successfully renew your license without any additional education. Okay? I don't know why you think that's good. Okay? Because the more education we have, the better off we are. Okay? Now, I want you just to go over some things with you. I'm going to give you some really good news. How many people are apprehensive about the final exam?
Yeah.
All right.
I didn't know there was one.
Are you ready? Are you ready?
Yes, there is
Here's
one.
a guarantee. I guarantee that everyone will pass the final exam, and I guarantee you'll be happy that you took it. See? So let me head that off at the pass, okay? Now, I'm just going to go over some of the other information that's in this packet. The second sheet shows you how to confirm your credit. Now, I have done this 300 times, and I worked out all the bugs. If you can't confirm your credit by following this, there's something wrong with you. Okay? Now, it's not that I don't want to hear from you. I'd love to hear from you. But I don't want to hear from you saying, could you tell me how to do this? Okay? Find somebody else and follow their instructions. Find somebody who successfully got the information and follow their instructions. Okay? So this is a way for you to check to see that I successfully uploaded you to the Real Estate Commission to give you credit for the 12 hours. All right? So I'm going to leave you that. Okay? Ethics Study Guide. This is the reason why you're going to pass the final exam. Here's the questions. We're going to go over this and give you all the answers to these questions, and you're going to study this. And then you're going to take a multiple choice test, 30 questions, and everybody will pass. Is that cool?
Yeah.
All right, what else is there? Okay. There is also here a $500 bill. If any of you want to take the brokers class, I'm offering it on June 18th. Okay? And only my students get $500 off the course. All right? So there's a breakdown of when it is. It's a little commercial for my school. There's a breakdown. You can pass that on to someone else. Okay? If somebody wants to take the brokers course. All right? So for some reason or other, people don't want to get their broker's license, and yet I think it's pretty important. You know why it would be important to get your broker's license? Because you're on a listing appointment, and you're competing with 2 other firms, and you're the only broker associate. You have an edge. You can explain to the seller that you are more knowledgeable than the average realtor, and they may choose you simply because you do have your broker's license. All right? End of commercial. Okay. All right. Welcome. Thank you very much for coming to my school. I sincerely appreciate you being here. Okay. My name is Gene Mulroy. I opened a real estate school about 7 years ago. I was at the end of my career, and I wanted to give back something to the real estate business. I have been in the business for 36 years. I have listed and sold over 500 homes. I participated in over 400 real estate transactions. So I am you. You know, I'm no theoretical person, okay? I have paid my dues. I have known the thrill of victory, and the agony of the people. Okay? I got thrown out of some of the nicest homes in New Jersey. Okay? I also listed some of the nicest homes in New Jersey. All right, so I want you to know that I'm here to help you to learn a little bit about ethics and to get an insight. Like, for example, how many of you know that if somebody is found in violation of the Code of Ethics, that the fine is up to $5,000 and a loss of membership in the National Association of Realtors for up to a year? How many of you knew that? One of the problems with ethics is that we don't chase people who engage in unethical activities because there's no money involved. Sure, there's a $5,000 fine to the person, okay, but our involvement does not result in us getting any value. And so we don't generally, we get upset, we know the agent now, and we stay away from them, we don't show their listings, whatever, but the problem is that they're still in the real estate business. Now, we got to clean up our own act. We got to get people in the real estate business. We need to blow the whistle on these people who are acting in an unethical way, knowing that there are major consequences for them to continue to do that. All right. We go into arbitration. We all follow arbitration because there's money involved. We'll follow it to the end. We'll get all the documentation and submit an arbitration, and we'll fight it because after everything is said and done, there's a payoff for us, okay? So for some reason or other, well, I know the reason, okay? There's money involved in arbitration. There's no money involved in an ethics violation, okay? You have to just want to clean up this business, okay? All right, now I was thinking about something. You ever notice that we don't get value anymore? You know, you buy a car for $20,000. How much is it worth a year later? 10? Okay. How many people here have a 401k that is a 101k now? It's coming back. It's a 201k. It's coming back, okay? There's other things that do have value. You know, a 45-cent stamp from the post office will give you the opportunity to mail something to California. I mean, you can't walk to the post office for 45 cents. They'll send a letter to California. So there's value there. Where else is there value?
In real estate.
How about your real estate license? Think about it. Think about the value of your, have you ever calculated the value of your real estate license? It's cost $50 a year. The sum total of your income divided by the number of years you've been in the real estate business is the value of your license. If you made $50,000 a year for 10 years, your real estate license is worth $500,000. It costs you $50 a year. Now, of course, there are MLS dues and board dues and lockbox keys and E&O insurance, and there's a lot of other stuff, but the actual license is only $50. Now, if you can make, my license today, after 36 years in the real estate business, is worth about $2 million. Now, that's not a lot of money. It's about $60,000 a year for 36 years, but the fact is that it has an unlimited value. So if you really want to get value, protect your real estate license, or keep buying 45-cent stamps, okay? All right, now, would you jeopardize your real estate license that has an unlimited income for any amount of money? Has anybody ever asked you to do that? I have to tell you, people have asked me. By the way, in 36 years, everything's happened to me. There's no unique experience that I have. Everything's happened to me. I was selling a home in Tinton Falls, and I showed it. They showed a strong interest. They wanted to bring their parents back the following Saturday, and they were going to make an offer, so they said. The seller called me in the evening. This was a $300,000 house, and the commission was 7%. Back then, we used to get 7%. So the total commission was about $21,000. So the seller calls me in the evening, and he says to me, "Gene, are you going to be selling my home?" And I said, "Yes, the parents are coming back next week, and we're going to make you an offer after the parents take a look at the house." All right? He said, okay, well, you know what happens on Friday? I said, no, what happens on Friday? My listing expires. Now, of course, he forgot about the fact that there's a protection period. Sellers don't remember things like this, right? We tell them about the protection period, but he didn't know that. He didn't realize. He thought that after Friday, that he would have the right to negotiate directly with me. And here's what he wanted to do. He said, Gene, here's what I'm going to tell you what I'm going to do. It says on your business card that you're a real estate broker. I'm a broker associate, yes, but I work for a broker. And he said, well, I'll tell you, if you sell my house next Saturday, I will agree in the contract to pay you $10,000 flat fee. Gene Mulroy, licensed real estate broker, $10,000. We'll cut out the brokers. I said, whoa. I said, well, you know what? Let's talk about that on Saturday, okay? I needed time to confer with my broker. All right, now, I sat down with my broker and I said, look, this guy is offering me a flat fee of 10 grand provided I eliminate all the brokers. He said, well, this is the broker now. I said, you know what you do? You list the property, negating the protection period, and we'll do it for a flat fee of $10,000. No problem, right? How about the other broker?
Oh, right.
How about the other broker? So I said to my manager, I said, there is value in the broker that listed the property initially because I would never have shown the property if they didn't list it. So he said, okay, well, we'll give him a referral fee. I said, no, I think he's entitled to half the commission. He said, are you out of your mind? And I said, no, that's what I think. Now, if you go along with me, fine, but if you want me to give him a referral fee, you're the boss, so, there's nothing I can do about it. So he said, you know what, I'll honor your wishes. So we did that. I listed it for a flat $10,000 fee. I gave them, the other broker, the $5,000, and my company earned $5,000, and I made $2,500 instead of $5,000. But I did the right thing. That's the definition of ethics. Doing what is right. On your study guide, first question says, what is ethics? How many people wrote down the answer? First question, what is ethics? Now, ethics and legal are two different things. Did you know that? Sometimes they're two different things. Sometimes the right thing to do is also the legal thing to do, but sometimes it's not. Let me just ask you, this is a true story from my real estate career. I was listing a house up in Matawan on Little Street, right next to the firehouse. And I went down the basement and I saw some kitchen cabinets and I saw an outside door. And it occurred to me that this property might have been a two-family at one time. It was in a single-family residential area. So I turned to the seller and I said, was this ever a two-family home? And the seller said, absolutely. We didn't need the rent from the tenant and we wanted our family to be under one roof, so we converted it from a two-family to a one-family. Now, as a two-family, non-conforming, it was worth $100,000 more than a single family. What was the biggest question I had in my mind now? Did you get the permit? How many people here would get the permit?
Would get
Or what, the single family, turning back to single family?
Brenda and I vehemently disagree with this, okay? Now, I just want to, maybe I can change your mind, okay? Ready? The $100,000 additional value is the financial security of your family, isn't it? You're going to give up $100,000 for taking down some kitchen cabinets and removing a door. We're talking about $150, maybe $1,500, maybe I'm exaggerating. So maybe $2,000 to remove the kitchen upstairs and take down the door and make it into a single-family home. If you get the permits, you can't change it back because you changed it from non-conforming to conforming. Now, but if you don't get the permits, you can change it back, and the only liability you have is $500 fine for not getting the permits. So let me see. $100,000 in value, a $500 fine for violating the law. To me, it doesn't make any sense. And I'm the most ethical person that you can be, and I would not get the permits. I would protect the value of the property and just change it and then change it back. And in the interim, if I get caught, then I would pay the $500 fine. Change your mind yet? No, okay. Well, that's good. I mean, that's good. It's great to have high ethical standards, but you see, sometimes, things are not always as crystal clear. Let me give you another example. It's going to require you to do some math, but it's real simple math, okay? I listed this house in Fairhaven, $800,000. At the open house, a young couple walked in and loved the house and they wanted to buy it, but they had a house to sell in Little Silver. So I'd have to make a contingent offer and leave the property on the market. That was my first ethical dilemma, is do I sandbag the sale of the initial property, to try to get the other property sold? Well, I told the buyer that, you can make an offer contingent on the sale of your home, but we can't take the property off the market. And he agreed, and I listed his house in Little Silver. I held an open house on his house in Little Silver and sold it. Now let's look at the money, all right? Let's look at the money. 6% commission on 800 grand. How much money is that? 48,000 bucks. Write that down. 48,000 bucks. His property in Little Silver was worth $600,000 at 6%. How much money is that? 36,000 and was it 48,000?
48,000.
How much is that?
84.
$84,000. Did I tell you that I was 4 months behind on my mortgage and I was paying my Visa with my MasterCard? I didn't tell you.
Oh.
But that should not matter. Of course it did matter. Your personal situation has to come into play. So, on the day of the closing, payday, I was asked to read the water meter in the basement. So I went into the house and I turned on the light switch to the basement. The plate was gone. The light plate was gone. Guess what was coming through the walls? Through the light switch.
Static, like water.
Does anybody know what urea formaldehyde foam insulation is? Only the old timers know what that is, right? Urea formaldehyde foam insulation. That's the stuff, formaldehyde is the stuff they put in your veins when you die. It was on a list of carcinogenics. Okay? Now, let's see. What's that, $84,000? How many people would buy a 99-cent light switch? I mean, cover. $84,000, 99-cent light switch. I just find it to be very interesting. How many realtors out there do you think would do it? Now, I wouldn't do it because I was brought up with what I call the Sisters of No Mercy. You know the Sisters?
Absolutely.
What the sisters did to me as a kid today is called child abuse. Back then they called it corporal punishment, spare the rod and spoil the child, right? But I turned out okay, I think I have half a brain anyway. I think I'm okay, all right? Now, the point I'm making is this. I had to reveal this information and still see if I could keep the transaction intact, right? So I got to the closing, I isolated the seller, and I sat down with him and I said, look, I discovered this in your walls downstairs. How extensive is it? He said, oh, that's great stuff. So he didn't even know that it was a carcinogenic. The basement was really cold. We didn't want to, put heating ducts in it. So we got this urea, this foam insulation, and all of a sudden it's nice and toasty down in the basement. I said, really? Did you know it was a carcinogenic? He said, no, I had no idea. I said, well, to what extent is it in there? Well, it was in two walls. A wall going down and then to another right wall. I said, okay, well, be prepared. I have to tell the buyer. Be prepared to give them a credit to remove it. Thank God it's only in 2 walls, because if this was throughout the entire house, they're a virtually unsaleable home. Now, this was in the 70s. I mean, they actually banned it in the 70s, but still, lots of homes have this in it. And so I went then to the buyer and I said, look, we have a problem with the insulation in the basement. And I explained the whole situation, and he said to me, you know, what is this stuff? I said, I have no idea what this stuff is. All I know is that it's on the list of carcinogenics, but I also know that it's a great insulator. So you could accept the house the way it is. It gets nice and cozy in the basement. Okay, you can ask for an allowance to remove the urea formaldehyde foam insulation, or you can cancel a contract. See, you can cancel a contract if there is a defect in the property that was not revealed to you prior to buying it, and this was a potential defect in the property. So they decided that they weren't going to do anything. They were going to close title and keep the basement the way it was. I went, phew. See, I just want to know if you are aware of a realtor, or any number of realtors, that might have just bought a light switch. See, it's not so easy to make a decision when you're personally involved, or when your personal situation is so difficult. You don't want to lose the sale, but you have to reveal the information because the buyer's entitled to know it. And of course, the seller already does know it. Okay, so these are examples of engaging in unethical behavior where you get a choice. You can get a choice to buy a light switch, or you can make a choice to make full disclosure and hope the chips fall. Because you know what? It could have gone the other way where the buyer said, I want to buy the house at any price. Do you ever notice that when there's like a small level of radon, buyers overreact to it? 4.0 picocurie is acceptable level. I was selling a house in Middletown. The radon came in at 4.9. It was like 0.9 over. And the buyer called Rutgers. Apparently Rutgers has some kind of environmental thing, and they asked about radon. Here's what they heard from Rutgers. Now, I don't know how true this is. Radon is the 2nd largest cause of lung cancer. I don't know anybody who's died of radon. And so the buyer didn't want to buy the house at any price. And so I said to the buyer, I said, maybe you don't understand. You could buy a home with 2, and it could go to 10. If you buy this house, your radon level will be 0 because they will remediate for it. I must be a lousy salesman because I couldn't convince him to, but you know what? Sometimes people are set in their own mind as to what they want to do, and there's no way that you can convince them that it's not in their best interest. Okay, so. Okay, I'm going to give you a few more incidences from my real estate career that'll help you get into a frame of mind where we're going to talk about ethics. Okay? We already know it's doing what is right. Answer to the first question. Right? What's the second question,
Ethics and morals.
Oh, okay. Anybody know the difference? You know, there's 3 aspects: ethics, morals, and the law. Think about that. Ethics, doing what is right. Morals, good versus bad. Right versus wrong, ethics. Good versus bad, morals. Legal versus illegal, the law. 3 different aspects. You guys watch Law and Order at all? Great show, great show. There was an episode of Law and Order. This is not true. I mean, it's an interesting episode where this perpetrator was in a bodega, and he had a knife to a woman's throat. And the bodega was surrounded by police, okay? And he calls for an attorney. He wants to know what his legal rights are. This is the one that's going to just about kill this woman here. So outside, there's a prosecuting attorney. She's not a defense attorney. She's a prosecuting attorney. And she said, well, I'm an attorney. Let me go in and see what I can do. So she goes in there, and the perpetrator says, are you an attorney? She says, yes, show me your bar card. She pulls out a bar card, shows him that she is an attorney. Well, the attorney talks him into letting the woman go. All right? Later on, the perpetrator who was arrested found out that she was a prosecuting attorney, and she filed an ethics complaint against them for misrepresentation. And it went to the ethics committee, and she was about to lose her license to practice law because she was deceiving. Now, here's what I find to be very interesting. If she said that she was a prosecuting attorney and the perpetrator would have killed the woman, that would be okay. You see the problem with the law? It doesn't always address what's right and what's wrong. She did the right thing, but she violated the law and she could have lost her license over it. Isn't that interesting? I just find it to be very interesting. That's not a true story.
It is true. The jury duty, they steer you like, you can't do what's right, you have to do what the law is.
Yeah. So ethics and the law sometimes, conflict with each other. You know, if you had a family in Katrina down in New Orleans where they devastated every home and people were homeless, and I mean, if that was your family, right, where you lost everything and you needed to feed your family, would you break into a 7-Eleven or a bodega to steal bread and milk and eggs to feed your family? Would you? Sure, but you see, that's against the law. It's not like you go into Best Buy to steal a flat screen TV. See, so there's interpretations of something that's illegal, but might be the right thing to do. So it would be the right thing to do to break into the store, but it would be totally illegal. And I'm just wondering whether you'd be prosecuted for it, or whether they would take into consideration the extenuating circumstances. All right? All right, so I learned about ethics through my experience in real estate. You know, the school of hard knocks is the best school in the world. You know, I am not a very well-educated person. I have a college degree, but I don't have a master's or anything more than that. Everything I learned about real estate, I learned through trial and error. All right, and I also learned that you have to treat everybody the same. You know, we're all the same, right? It's very hard sometimes. You know, ethics is simple. Do what's the right thing to do. All right? Sometimes what the right thing to do is not the legal thing to do, and you have to recognize that. Okay? And for example, there's a story in your text there about this. I dramatized it a little bit for you. Okay? You listed a house. 30 days into the listing, you have an open house. A neighbor comes in and says, well, you know, the real reason they're selling is a sex offender moved in across the street. The seller never told you. They said that they were moving out of state and they had already bought the house, and you know, so you couldn't even get a referral fee out of it. So here you are now. You know, by the way, you go on the website to verify, because they could have been lying, right? So you verify that not only is it a sex offender, but it's the worst kind of a sex offender that lives across the street. Now, who do you represent? No, you represent the seller. You listed the house. So you represent the seller, and you found out something that the seller didn't tell you. The next buyer who comes in with an offer has 3 little kids.
So I have to tell you that now?
No. United States of America, the seller doesn't have to tell you anything. You know? Of course, he didn't want to tell you anything because he wanted to, see, he didn't realize that there was a confidentiality with the fiduciary. However, he didn't tell you. He didn't tell you. You found out through the neighbor, and then you checked the website, and now you've got an offer from a family with 3 little kids. Now, tell me what you would do.
I would tell them.
Okay, now, you tell, violating your fiduciary, you can lose your license. You can lose your license. Not only that, the seller can sue you for violating your fiduciary. Remember, that's like attorney-client relationship. Excuse me?
But if something happened, let's say, and then you didn't tell, can they turn that around?
Absolutely. Did I tell you about the Sisters of No Mercy?
They will turn that back. You can't let it know it.
You know, it's like I was selling a house, and my buyer found that the sill plate was riddled with termites. And they had to jack up the house and replace the sill plate. my buyer passed on the house, they did nothing about it, and then another buyer came in. I called the realtor and I said, listen, make sure you check the sill plate because my buyer passed because it was riddled with termites. It's a similar situation, all right?
Does that man, the guy who listed that house, could he have said to me, yeah, I know? Or do he have to act on?
It doesn't matter whether he knows or not, you know. If he did know about it, he would be in the same dilemma that we're now talking about.
Right.
Does he reveal the information?
He
Now,
wanted to know why it wasn't selling. And I said, I think I got done. I mean, the guy was on TV.
unbelievable. Well, what would you do in that situation where you're the listing agent? Now, I know that most people here would reveal the information, right? But let's put it this, if you put it in perspective, I would like to get the information to the buyer without losing my license.
Is there
Wouldn't
another
you?
realtor involved
Wouldn't
with
you?
the buyer?
Absolutely.
Is
Okay.
there another realtor involved with the buyer?
Yeah,
Or is it yours?
it's an outside broker. It's an outside broker. So tell me what you would do.
I would suggest to the other agent that they have the buyer, or they, check with the local police department to make sure everything is in order.
Why are you asking me to do this?
Just to make certain everything is in place. I always like to make sure everything's.
No, but I'm very suspicious that you're asking me to do this. Do you tell all of your,
Yes.
all of your buyers, agents to do this?
Yeah, because I have grandchildren, so I like to make sure everybody is in the right place, yes.
Well, if you can get in the habit of doing that, that's really a good thing. I mean, if you had a buyer and they were buying into a neighborhood, we asked them to check the website because it's right in the contract, okay? While you're in attorney review, check the website, see if there are any sex offenders in the area. While you're in attorney review, you can cancel the contract, okay? But remember, I represent the seller and not the buyer. And by the way, just so you understand the law, the buyer's not entitled to the information. They can go get it, but they're not entitled to it because they're not homeowners. Homeowners are the only people who are entitled to know about the sex offenders from the county prosecutor. The county prosecutor will reveal where the sex offenders are to people who live in the neighborhood. So the buyer's not entitled to it. Now, if you have the habit of saying to every one of your buyers, whether an 80-year-old couple or a 24-year-old couple just getting started, if you have the habit of saying, look, while we're in attorney review, please check this website to make sure that you're satisfied with the neighborhood as far as the sex offenders are concerned. You know, by the way, I've had some people go on. There's a lot of sex offenders, a lot. But you know, there's lots of tears and everything, and, you know. So, but you know what? I'm still getting back to what would you do? You're the listing agent representing the seller's interest. If you reveal the information, you can lose your license.
Just tell someone else and have them tell them.
Oh, now there's the answer. When can we interface with the buyer directly? By the way, we don't interface initially with the buyer when they come through an outside broker, right? When can we interface? By the way, I wouldn't tell the buyer's agent for a number of reasons. Number one, how do we know the buyer's agent is going to tell the buyer? Because the buyer's agent wants to make the sale. Okay? How do you know the buyer's agent isn't going to call you a seller and say, you know what, Gene's violating your fiduciary by giving me this information, and then I'm going to be in big trouble. All right? So I'm not going to call the buyer's agent. Okay? Now, what I would do, see, no, we didn't have any interaction here. Only one person told me what they would do. Now, you said you would not get involved. You would jeopardize your license. You would tell them.
I want to find a way to get this up, because I know that I can sleep at night because I have children.
Me too, I'm with you.
Build it.
I'm with you,
It's not
but I don't want to
right.
lose my license.
Right, so there's always a way. There's a way.
Now, when
Not too
you-
many ways.
Something I would say to people, why don't you visit the neighbors on either side to see what the neighborhood's
Oh, see,
like?
now you're on the right track here, right?
There's a way.
When can we interface directly with the buyer? When?
Closing.
What? No, how about the engineering inspection?
Yeah.
See, we could set up the engineering inspection, make sure the seller's not home,
Right.
and then meet with the selling agent and the buyers. And invite the next door neighbor who told you about the sex offender and introduce them to each other. Now, that may be questionable as to whether you would do that or not, but the Sisters of No Mercy will not let me rest at night if I let this happen. I will not be able to sleep. And I'm not telling you that I'm right, I'm just telling you this is what I would do. I cannot live with the fact that I have information that would put 3 little children in potential harm. I can't live myself.
But how does your
Whether
son-
that's right or wrong, see, I'm gonna tell you something. You're gonna disagree with me, and it doesn't make me wrong and you right, and it doesn't make me right and you wrong.
And
It's
the
just
seller
what we
has
do.
no problem.
Who said the seller doesn't have any problem?
Well, you know.
Who said that?
We're not allowed to tell, so can you appeal to the seller?
Yeah, right. Listen, you gotta understand, if the seller doesn't tell you initially, what do you think the seller's gonna
I
say?
just found out, and if I found out, a
All right,
potential buyer will
here's the
find out.
response. If you jeopardize this sale, I'm coming after your real estate
Well,
license.
of
You
course I know
represent my
duty.
interest.
I know my duty, but however, you can't appeal to the,
I'm not talking to the seller.
I would.
I am not
just-
talking.
Absolutely.
Why do you think the seller didn't tell you initially?
Because
Why
they don't
did
want
they
me
not
to
tell
know,
you?
but he, maybe.
They were
you don't wanna
hiding.
say.
Why do you think the seller's selling?
Oh, that's true.
Now, go right ahead,
Mm-hmm.
and you know what? Face the consequences of doing that. Just think about it for a second.
Listing, but I could sleep at night.
But then somebody
Wait,
else is gonna
wait, you can
sell
sleep
it.
at night telling the seller that you're gonna tell the buyer's agent?
No, that
Just
you really
approaching
should
them.
disclose this, just
Yeah.
approach it.
And the seller says, no, I'm not disclosing it.
Well, then-
Do you
then
think you solved the problem
Well, I
by
have
talking
duty,
to the
yeah,
seller?
You know, I would say I have a duty and that I won't tell, but I think that morally you.
I still
Again,
have
we're
my
back to
way.
morals, right?
Exactly.
Remember?
The same group
Remember,
of sisters in
there's
mercy.
ethics, there's morals, and there's the law. There's ethics, doing what is right,
And I know the
morals, good or bad,
line. Mhm.
the law, what's legal.
Legal and illegal.
Yeah. Somebody else said, yes.
I think that's why our contracts today read that way, simply because it is a legal issue and they want to protect the realtors as well as the homeowner and everybody else involved, the purchaser. It's their responsibility, just like it is if you have a dump site in the area or there are problems with,
Yes, exactly right, because if you read the contract, it's the buyer's responsibility to find the contaminated soil sites. Now, of course, if you have knowledge, then you want to pass that on to the buyer, but you can't pass that information on about a sex offender without violating your fiduciary. Now, only people entitled to the information are homeowners. As a realtor, you should stay out of it unless you know something, because knowledge gives you responsibility. See, when you know something to be true, then you have the responsibility to handle it any way you want. Now, some people would reveal the information, some people would not. And there are people who would say, you know what? It's the buyer's agent's responsibility to tell the buyer to go on the website. Why am I being dragged into it? Well, the fact is that you can't rely on other people doing what they're supposed to do, right? Sometimes you can't rely on other people at all, and sometimes you have to do what you think is right, whether it's legal or not. And what I would do may differ from what you would do, and that's okay. That's okay, but that's still what I would do, because I have this moral compass that tells me what's right and what's wrong. If it starts bothering me, those sisters click in like that, so. Okay, all right, so those are a few stories from my real estate career that might get you interested in learning a little bit about ethics, okay, so. Okay. Now, I want you to follow along in the book here, and I'll do the best that I can to make this as painless as possible for you. What question?
We just,
One and two?
the discussion you just had, what's the bottom
Have the
line?
neighbor help.
What I would do is I would invite the neighbor in to tell,
Oh, the rigmarole.
I would invite the neighbor in at the engineering inspection and hope that, everything, if the neighbor would reveal it to me, wouldn't they reveal it to the buyer?
Yeah.
Okay. Now, this is not a real case, this is a hypothetical
Yeah, I
case,
understand.
okay, so,
Mine was a real case, it just happened.
Yeah, you're with the real case, but see, you weren't involved directly with the buyer,
Right.
but
I know, I had the buyer, he had the seller.
did the buyers know about the sex offender? Did they get the information from you?
Yeah.
How about if there was
But
a
is that
murder?
bad? Is that bad? I thought I represented them.
No?
How about if there was a murder in the house?
Murder is not material to the transaction. I'm going to tell you something that I believe in, and I hope that you do too. Whether it's material to the transaction or not, everything that you're going to find out after you close, you should know before you close. You know, our ulterior motive for working with buyers is to get them to send us their friends, right? We're in this business as a referral business. So, if you knew about a murder in the house and you didn't reveal it, and then that buyer finds out 24 hours after they close, how many referrals are they going to send to you for hiding this information? And you could defend yourself forever, and you'd be right. It's not material to the transaction. I don't have to reveal it to you. Everything that you learn about the property before the closing, you should know before the closing. You shouldn't have a big surprise after the closing. Now, I sold a house up in Hazlitt where, you know, back then, you know, we used to go directly to the seller with our contracts because we didn't have buyer agency. We all represented the seller. On the way out, the seller said to me, by the way, I hate when they say by the way, by the way, a former owner committed suicide in the garage. I'm sorry they told me that, you know? Now, I didn't have to reveal it to the buyer, but I went home and I spent hours agonizing over what I should say, because I had a signed contract, subject to an attorney review, but I had a binding contract. So, at 1 o'clock in the morning, I called up the buyer.
Oh, no.
I got the husband on the phone, and I said, well, good news, you got the house. He said, wow, you've been negotiating with me? I said, not really. I've been home for a number of hours. I've been thinking about this situation. I want to reveal to you that the homeowner on the way out told me about a suicide that happened in the garage when a previous owner committed suicide. And I wanted you to know before the contract become binding. So he stopped there. I'm holding the phone. And you have to understand that you know, I needed to close. You know, it's so hard to do what's right when you really need the money. You know, I mean, remember, I don't have to tell them. I'm 4 months behind on my mortgage, and I need to have this sale go through. I don't have to tell them. Most people wouldn't tell them. Those Sisters of No Mercy clicked in, and so he said, well, it didn't happen in the house, right? I said, no, it happened in the garage. He said, well, okay, well, don't worry about it. Now, he had to tell his wife, but I went to sleep at night with knowing that I made a decision that I felt was the right thing for me to do. The right thing, not always the legal thing, okay? So.
What the wife
They buy the
say?
house?
What the wife say?
They bought the house. I don't know why. Maybe he never told his wife.
He wants to sleep.
You know, everybody has this moral compass. If it's bothering you, you probably should disclose it if it's bothering you. If it's bothering you, there's a reason why it's bothering you.
We got it.
Okay.
The truth is always gonna come out.
What?
The truth is always gonna come out. You're gonna find out that the guy hung himself.
Right. Let me see. Did I say something about everything you learn after you're closing, you should know before you close? I remember saying that. By the way, there's a couple of other things that you should really write down, okay? Every decision that you make, you should apply this question. Whose interest is served by this decision? You know, you list the property at 6%, you put in a multiple at 2, and you list and you keep a 4% on the listing side. Whose interest is served by doing that? Just a question. Everybody
That's
follow me
what
on
I
that?
heard.
You list the property at 6, you put in a multiple at 2, keep 4% on the listing side. Whose interest is served by doing
Your
that?
own.
Whose interest should be served?
So,
Shouldn't we work always in our client's best interest? Now, I listed a property at 7, put it in multiple at 3, kept 4, but I ran a full-page color picture of the house on the front cover of the Asbury Park Press, cost $2,000. That's why I took it at 7% and kept 4. There was a reason. There are reasons for you to keep more than 50% for a reason. As long as you
Wyckoff was
can.
doing that.
Excuse me?
Wyckoff was doing 2 and 4.
I know. You know something? You have to close your mind to what other people do. You have to just do what you think is right. You know? And just the fact that other people are not following, you know, the ethical behavior, it's on them. Anybody believe in the law of compensation? You ever heard of the law of compensation? No. Ralph Waldo Emerson wrote it was an essay called The Law of Compensation. Basically says that we're compensated for everything that we do. Okay? We call it karma. Put out good and good comes back. Put out bad and bad comes back. Sometimes when somebody takes advantage of you and maybe takes the listing lead off your desk and lists the property, sometimes the only satisfaction you can get is that down the road it's going to happen to them. You know, so do the right thing, even though no one's looking. Do the right thing. Okay? All right, real integrity is doing the right thing knowing that no one's going to know whether you did it or not. Yeah, I just said that, but Oprah Winfrey said that. Not me, that wasn't my quote, that was her, okay? Ethics, remember? Ethics, morality, and the law. By the way, I think one of the questions on the finals talks about the difference between ethics and morals. Does somebody read that question?
What's the difference between ethics?
Oh, there it is, the difference between ethics and morals. Ethics are rules set down by man. Morals come from a higher being. You need to write that down, because that's the answer to one of the questions. Rights, wrong, good, bad. Remember? Doing what is right, doing what is good versus, doing what is right versus wrong, doing good versus bad. You know, ethics versus morals. You can just put the word ethics there and morals. Our behavior that's determined by circumstances. We get involved sometimes with circumstances that, you know, take us away from our legal sense, and we try to do what is right. You know, that incident we talked about getting the permits. Now, I never finished this, but they got the permits. I mean, they said something like this to me. You know, Gene, we are law-abiding citizens, and if it's a requirement that we have to get the permits to change it from a two-family to a single-family, then we're going to do it. Okay, well, that's okay with you, you know, but you just lost $100 grand by following the law, and the penalty was a $500 fine. I don't know, the net number is that $99,500? But it's okay if you got the permits. It's okay. I may not be right, but I'm never wrong. Oh, wait a second. Once I thought I was wrong, but I was mistaken. You ever hear that expression? Once I thought I was wrong, but I was mistaken. Okay. Albert Schweitzer says, ethics is reverence for life, the name we give for our concern for good behavior. The law draws a firm black and white line between right and wrong, and ethics tends to come in shades of gray. Stealing is wrong. Stealing a loaf of bread to feed your family is an ethical dilemma. It's wrong, but it might be the right thing to do. Does a sense of ethics or morality come naturally, or must it be learned? Well, Mark Twain said, morals are acquired, no one is born with them. You know, when you're growing up, it's all about you. You know, if you have small children, you'll see that they're very selfish and it's all about them. But then later on, you find out that there's other people who live in the world, you know, and you have to be considerate of their feelings.